Your girl's got her fake glasses on, so that could only mean one thing. We are gonna go back to the basics and talk about my top 10 favorite books of all time. In honor of me rebranding my book club and launching Kindred House, where it's basically just a community format book club, including all things wellness, self-care, all the things I love and talk about on this channel anyway. Kindred House is gonna hold all of that and more, including all my book recommendations. But I figured we haven't done a 10 of my favorite books of all time in a hot minute, so let's get into it. Okay, I did split this up a little bit into sections. First, we're gonna talk about romance. I could make a whole video just on my favorite romance books, but I picked out 4 of my favorites. First one being Funny Story by Emily Henry. This one had me literally giggling in my bed. Like, I was reading this and I was like, oh my god, I didn't even want it to end. Like, it was so sweet. Basically what happens is her fiance breaks up with her for his, like, the girl you shouldn't worry about, and the girl you shouldn't worry about is dating this guy Miles. And then Miles and I forget her name, but the fiance then, like, obviously, like, she has nowhere to go because he's like, move your stuff out, she's moving in. So then they end up living together, Miles and this fiance, going through the heartache together, and the banter is amazing. Their chemistry is so sweet. I feel like Emily Henry just, like, has a way of creating characters that are so likable. Second one is Swear on This Life. I was in Barnes & Noble with my friend Alex and she was like, have you read this book? And I was like, no, should I? Like, is it good? And she was like, it's literally one of my favorite romance books. And I was like, say less, I'm sold. Also because, like, I love a second chance at romance. Basically, he writes a book about their, like, childhood, like, they grew up right next to each other. And then he writes a book about their, like, kind of childhood, and then years later, like, she reads it. The book was to kind of, like, get her attention, and it worked. And you just, like, kind of jump back and forth between time, and then, like, you see what happens as they grow up. At the same time, you're kind of, like, seeing what their dynamic is like now that they're, like, adults. It was just like I read it so quick. Like, I think it was one of those books that I read in, like, a night or two because I was like, I need to know how this ends. And it delivers. It gives you all the fluffy romance, but also, like, at the same time having an interesting plot. Next, this one I recommend to everyone who wants, like, a really good, quick, smutty book. Because I think that Elle Kennedy is quite literally, like, the queen of smut. And so I always recommend The Deal. Like, if you haven't read The Deal, it is, like, the easiest no-brainer type of book that you can read. And sometimes, like, you just need those, like, little palate cleansers, you know, of just pure smut. The Deal, honestly, is probably, like, what got me into reading, like, all of Elle Kennedy's books, and now I think I've read, like, every single one. But I don't go into this book thinking, like, the plot's gonna be amazing, but, like, if you need a good, like, smutty book, this should be your jam. Last but not least, we have Meant to Be. Meant to Be by Emily Giffin is it is, like, the sweetest romance book. It is the epitome of, like, February in a book to me. I'm pretty sure it was based off of someone in the Kennedy family this story is based off of. So he is very, like, a New York, like, you know, rich man, and then she is just, like, a normal, got recruited to be a model or something, but, like, came from a very normal background. And, like, the characters are fun, there's good character development, a classic. Like, I feel like it's, like, a romance classic. It's kind of like The Notebook in, like, that way, where it's, like, a very classic timeline. The one and only thriller I'm putting on this list is The Last Mrs. Parrish, and if you haven't read The Last Mrs. Parrish, it is, in my personal opinion, hands down the best thriller book you could read. Like, it's beyond good. Like, it's juicy, it keeps you on the edge of your seat, like, the characters are fun, and it's just kind of like in a book. So that is the one and only thriller I'm putting on this list. Okay, I newly have been obsessed with fantasy books, and I used to actually, like, really not vibe with fantasy, or so I thought. I thought I used to not vibe with fantasy, but then January 2023 is when I read A Court of Thorns and Roses for the first time, and after that I was like, I'm never going back. Romantasy books are that girl. Like, they have me in a chokehold. I now almost exclusively read fantasy books. So the number one I'm going to give you is Defy the Night. These 3 that I'm talking about are very tame romantasy books. I can't really do the whole, like, It has a lot of world building. These have more of like a fairy tale feel to them. Defy the Night is technically YA, but you guys, it is one of the best romance books and also just like fun plot lines that I have read in a hot minute. And the series is finished, which is always the best part because then you can like binge it in one go and then you don't have to wait for another book to come out. Basically, there's like the mortals and then there's like the prince and the king, and everyone hates the prince and the king. This like disease is like widespread over their land and only like the higher ups have the antidote, and then she kind of like works in secret with this guy to get people the cure, and then we kind of like see how everything unfolds. Really, really good. Next one. If you guys follow me on TikTok, you already know I'm gonna mention this one. It's Spark of the Everflame. Spark of the Everflame is low-key kind of the same vibes to Defy the Night, but like because there's like the Descendants, which is like people with magic, and then there's the mortals with obviously they don't have any magic, and like the Descendants have ruled for like a long time and the mortals like are like rising up in rebellion, and then she kind of like works with the rebels, but then we have like the prince, and it's just really juicy. I always say this book is like the epitome of a really good pining book because like the romance is there. I really like the characters. Last romantasy book I'm gonna mention is Powerless. Powerless has a lot of hype on Book Talk, I think, and this is the one where I'm like, that hype is worth it. There's 2 books out right now and oh my god, like it is so good. I'm not gonna lie, like I remember the first like 20% of the book I was kind of like, all right, where is this going? And then once it got to like the like end chunk and then the second book, I was hooked. So if you want a really good romantasy, Powerless is worth the hype. 2 regular like fiction books I'm gonna mention with like no romance. The first time I made this video, I feel like I mentioned a lot of fiction books, like regular fiction books, and it's crazy to me now looking back like how much sad fiction I used to consume. Now I'm like in the opposite direction of like, I will not read sad books. Sad girl lit is not for me, so if that's you, we probably don't have the same taste in books, and that's okay. This is coming from someone who like, my favorite book used to be Normal People, and now I would never, I probably would never read something like that again. Because I'm just like, if I'm gonna read a book, like I'm gonna be escaping into the book, and like I want it to deliver like juicy, good vibes. But my 2 exceptions to that rule are Lessons in Chemistry and Tomorrow, Tomorrow, Tomorrow. Both of these incredible works of fiction. I think I rated both of these 5 stars just because it was so well written. I was in awe. Lessons in Chemistry, I feel like most people know, and I really enjoyed it. Like I really enjoyed the aspect of woman in that time period and how she just kind of like defied the odds and is just so like intelligent and owns who she is, and I thought the plot was interesting. Thought everything about it was so well done. Tomorrow, Tomorrow, Tomorrow is one of those books I could vividly imagine being a very successful movie, and I could just see that being so well done on screen because it takes place over like, I want to say like 3 decades or something like that, but there are 2 kids who make a video game together like in college, but they were childhood besties, and it's like completely like platonic like the whole time, and so you kind of see them like ebb and flow with each other's lives, but throughout the book we're kind of hearing about the perspective of the video game through both of them telling it, because like it like blows up and becomes like kind of like a Mario Kart type of deal. It's just so interesting. I never would have thought I would like a book about video games, and I was laughing, I was crying, like it took me on a whirlwind of emotions, and I just loved every second of it. And you really just like love the characters. This was another one of my book club books, and it was so good. But anyway, those are my favorite books. I feel like I left out so many goodies, but I'm so excited for you guys to read these books for the first time if you haven't already. Anyway, go follow me on Kindred House and look out for new exciting book recommendations there. Lots of exciting stuff to come, and I hope you guys enjoy this video. Oh, enjoy my book club if you want. We meet every month on Zoom, and it is just the best time ever. Like I literally love my book club girls so much. So yeah, links to everything is gonna be below, and I will see you guys next week.